From the end of the First World War to the start of the Second, little attention is really given to the rise of the Nazi Party within Germany, nor is much attention given to the acquisitions that the nation made prior to the outbreak of the war. But in the mid to the late 30s, a number of events occurred that cemented Germany towards a war footing, and had there been an Allied response, would have changed the entire dynamic of the Second World War. In this video, we'll be looking at the Auchluss. Unification of the German people into one state had been a goal since the fall of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806, and two nations, the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia, vied to be the nation to unify the Germanic lands. A number of wars between the two led to Prussia coming out on top in 1866, and after a war with France in 1870, managed to get all the Germanic states outside of Austria to agree to unification. While the German public in Austria stayed loyal to the state, they were more loyal to the Habsburg monarchy and still had ideals, even passive, of one day being united. Following the end of the First World War and the dissolution of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, popular opinion in Austria largely favored some sort of union with Germany, but it was explicitly forbidden by the peace treaties of Versailles and the Treaty of Saint-Germain. Even still, a German Austrian Republic was declared, one that claimed all majority German lands to be part of its state. Of course, the Western powers didn't recognize this republic, and the First Austrian Republic only held around half of the land that it claimed, even in German majority regions, with the largest section going to Czechoslovakia in what would be the Sudetenland, one of the sparking points of the war 20 years later. The constitutions of the Weimar Republic and the First Austrian Republic included a goal of unification, which was widely supported by democratic parties in both countries. In the early 1930s, popular support in Austria for union with Germany remained overwhelming, and the Austrian government looked to a possible customs union with Germany in 1931, but the French protested, even though the nation was a source of heavy German investment throughout the 20s. An anti-Aushluss party rose to power in the nation during the late 20s, and paramilitary forces between both the ruling party, the Christian Social, and the Socialist parties eventually started to fight one another, as the Christian party enforced more stringent guidelines on the overall public. The Austrian Nazi Party attempted various coups over the years, and when defeated outright, fled to Germany and still instigated attacks against political figures, souring the public's desire for an Auschluss to some degree and removing a large block of their support in the nation. On March the 4th of 1933, Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss suspended the Austrian parliament, following the leaders of the parliament leaving office to vote on an important piece of legislation. Dollfuss used this opportunity to declare that Parliament had ceased to function and blocked all attempts to reconvene it, also threatened to use military force against the representatives should they try to reconvene. Fighting erupted between socialist forces and the Austrian government, which resulted in a civil war. Dollfuss was victorious after 2 weeks of fighting and outlawed all parties save for his own, and started Austria towards a fascist state, but more like Italy's rather than Germany's. Italy had a vested interest in keeping Austria under their sphere of influence, and threatened a war against Germany if they attempted to intervene in the Civil War, and instead, Germany issued a boycott and embargo against the state, crippling it economically. After 3 years of this boycott, the new Austrian Chancellor Kurt Schuschnigg reached an agreement with Germany, where the imprisoned Nazis were released, and the party was then unrecognized within the state, as well as to follow Germany's lead in foreign policy. While this did anger the Italians, the Western Allies had driven a wedge in their previous relationship. Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, much to the protest of France and Britain, each threatening sanctions against Italy if they refused to stop the invasion. Italy ignored them, and continued on with the invasion, leaving the Stresa front the following year, the defensive pact between the three to contain Germany. At the same time, Mussolini tried to improve relations with Germany, seeing them as a potential ally in place of the Western powers. Germany was going through a 4-year plan, with the goal of expanding its war-making capabilities to be able to fight against the whole of Europe in 4 years. They are building up arms factories, gathering up raw materials, as well as creating synthetic oil. It soon became clear that they couldn't keep up with the time frame, and interest in an Austrian annexation grew more and more. Austria had large iron mines, a large workforce, and many more raw materials that would be important to keep the plan in progress. The different factions within the governmental leadership also largely agreed about Austrian annexation, with Hermann Göring being the loudest voice. While he didn't agree with Hitler regarding the situation in Eastern Europe, both largely agreed that Austria needed to be under their control, even if that meant breaking with the Italians. To accomplish this, Germany sent a list of ultimatums to the Austrian government, having them gradually cede more and more power to the Nazi Party in the state, all the while trying to use riots caused by the party members to justify an invasion. Following failed bids for referendums of unification, Chancellor Suchanek stepped down on March the 11th of 1938, leaving a Nazi supporter in his place. The following day, German troops crossed the border into Austria, greeted by cheering citizens all along the way. Even though the invasion was poorly coordinated, the Austrian army had been ordered to stand down and not protest the invasion force, and a placebo was offered to see if the public truly wished unification. Hitler's forces suppressed all opposition, and before the first German soldier crossed the border, Heinrich Himmler and a few SS officers had landed in Vienna to arrest representatives of the First Republic. During the few weeks between the Auchluss and the plebiscite, authorities rounded up Social Democrats, Communists, and members of various other parties, as well as Austrian Jews, and imprisoned them or sent them to concentration camps. Within a few days, 70,000 people had been arrested. The plebiscite was subject to large-scale propaganda and to the removal of the voting rights of nearly 10% of the voting population, with it mainly being members of left-wing parties and Jewish individuals. A rigged placebo was held, and with over 99.7% in favor, and thus the Austrian Republic was annexed into the right, with Mexico giving the loudest protest out of any nation at the time.